Our speaker today is Jim Adams. Jim is a native of Bartlesville, Oklahoma. He graduated from Oklahoma Baptist University and subsequently joined the Army, where he trained as a clinical laboratory administrator and served for 21 years. Following his military career, Mr. Adams worked in various civilian hospitals for an additional 26 years. In 2017, he retired and relocated with his wife, Ren, to Corpus Christi in order to be closer to family and to appreciate the climate and coastal Bend region. Mr. Adams has been affiliated with Unitarian Universalism since 2003 and has become a member of U2C3 in 2021. He regularly contributes musically by playing piano for services and keyboard for the band, assists with maintaining the church grounds, and serving on the worship team. Together with his wife, he has a son, a daughter, and 4 grandchildren. Please welcome Jim.
Thank you all very much. It's really a privilege to be able to share some thoughts with you today. Thank you for the opportunity. The 7th UU principle, is the volume okay? Good? A little louder? How's that? Better? Okay. The 7th UU principle has a lot in it. Respect for the independent web of all existence of which we are a part. I mean, that basically encompasses the most complex system on the planet. One of the first things I did in preparation for this talk was to go on the UUA website and look and see what it said there. And what I found was a couple of paragraphs written by a Reverend Forrest Gilmore, who's executive director of Shalom Community Center in Bloomington, Indiana. And it was titled Reflection on the 7th Principle. And I'd like to read you these 2 paragraphs. Our 7th principle, respect for the independent web of all existence of which we are a part, is a glorious statement. Yet we make a profound mistake when we limit it to merely an environmental idea. It is so much more. It is our response to the great dangers of both individualism and oppression. It is our solution to the seeming conflict between the individual and the group. Our 7th principle may be our Unitarian Universalist way of coming to fully embrace something greater than ourselves. The interdependent web expressed as the spirit of life, the ground of all being, the oneness of all existence, the community-forming power, the process of life, the creative force, even God, can help us develop that social understanding of ourselves that we and our culture so desperately need. It is a source of meaning to which we can dedicate our lives. End quote. Now, those are pretty lofty words and pretty abstract concepts, and he may be right, but what I wanted to focus on was something a little more that spoke to me, which was the part of his reflection, which focuses on help to grow our understanding of mankind's role in the environment and how we can use that 7th principle to improve our lives and the lives of others. To me, the 7th UU principle is a statement about systems and about our individual role within broader systems. So that's what I'd like to spend a few minutes talking about, systems and systems thinking. And I'll apologize ahead of time if this sounds like a lecture, but that may just be my style, so you just have to live with it. So, a system is an interconnected set of elements that is coherently organized in a way that achieves something. A system must have 3 things: elements, interconnections, and a function or purpose. The elements, whether they're people or ideas or cells or molecules or whatever, are interconnected in such a way that they produce their own patterns of behavior over time. A system, to a large extent, causes its own behavior. Now, systems thinking is a discipline for studying systems. It is a way of understanding how things work by looking at them as interconnected elements rather than isolated parts. It is a framework for seeing interrelationships rather than linear cause and effect chains, and seeing patterns of change rather than static snapshots. This is very helpful for solving complex problems, understanding behaviors, identifying the root cause of problems, and predicting potential unintended consequences of actions. To illustrate this, I'd like to share a story about a foreman giving his friend a tour in a manufacturing plant where he works. It just so happens that his friend is a systems thinker, and so you'll see how this comes out in the story. His friend uses a technique called the 5 whys to help understand systems and identify root causes of complex problems. Has anybody heard of the 5 whys before as a tool? Okay, good. This foreman and his friend were walking around the plants. He said, "Suddenly I see a pool of oil on the floor. So I grabbed the nearest member of the assembly line crew. Hey, there's a pool of oil on the floor. For Pete's sake, somebody could slip on that. So clean it up, please." So when I'm finished, my systems thinking friend breaks in with a quiet question. "Well, why is there oil on the floor?" "Yeah," I repeat to the crew member. "How'd the oil get on the floor?" The crew member replies, "Well, the gabungie is leaking." All of us automatically look up, and sure enough, there's a visible leak up there in the gabungie. "Okay," I say, "so we'll clean up the oil and get the gabungie fixed." My friend pulls me aside and says, "But why is the gabungie leaking?" "Yeah," I say. I turn to the crew member. "Why is the gabungie leaking?" "The gaskets are defective," he says. "Oh, well, then," I say, "here, clean up the oil, fix the gabungie, and do something about the gaskets." My friend adds, "And why are the gaskets defective?" "Yeah," I say, "just out of curiosity, how come we got defective gaskets in the gabungie?" The shop crew member says, "Well, we were told that purchasing got a great deal on those gaskets." And I can see my friend start to open his mouth, but this time I got there first. "Why did purchasing get such a great deal?" "How should I know?" says the crew member, wandering off to find a mop and a bucket. My friend and I go back to the office, make some phone calls. It turns out that we have a 2-year-old policy in the company that encourages purchasing at the lowest price, hence the defective gaskets, of which there is a 5-year supply, along with the leaking gabungie and the pool of oil. In addition, this policy is probably causing other problems throughout the organization, not closely related in time and space to the root cause. This story is one of my favorites about illustrating 2 of the laws of systems. One, cause and effect are often not closely related in time and space. And today's problems can come from yesterday's solutions. Somebody in the purchasing department probably got a great performance rating and maybe even a bonus because they saved the company so much money on buying cheaper gaskets. The story also illustrates the difference between symptomatic and fundamental solutions. Mopping up the pool of oil versus getting gaskets that really work. Now I'm going to shift gears just a little bit. In order to help us see the structures that underlie systems and complex situations, I'd like to introduce you to the language, the system thinking language that can help us restructure how we look at things. Western languages, with their subject, verb, and object structure, are biased towards a linear view that promotes immediate cause and effect relationship. A causes B. For example, the act of filling a glass of water is viewed as A, the person, and B, the filled glass of water. It's simple. But systems thinking, if you look at it using the language of systems thinking, you will be introduced to the fact that just as English has nouns, pronouns, and verbs, the language of systems uses three building blocks called reinforcing feedback, balancing feedback, and delays. Reinforcing feedback promotes growth or makes things faster. Whenever you're in a situation where things are growing or getting faster, you can be sure reinforcing feedback is at work. A simple example is pressing on the accelerator pedal when driving a car, which results in the car going faster. The more the pedal is pressed, the faster the car goes. Balancing or stabilizing feedback operates when there's a goal-oriented behavior. An example of this is when you set the cruise control on your car to move at 60 miles an hour. Balancing feedback will cause you to accelerate to 60, but not any faster. And the third element of systems is delay. Delay is often one of the trickiest ones. Delays are interruptions in the flow of influence which make the consequences of actions occur gradually. Sometimes it's so slow we don't even think it has any impact. A common example is the delay experienced when adjusting the water temperature for a shower, especially if the shower is a long way from the water heater. So reinforcing feedback, balancing feedback, and delays are the building blocks with which you can draw systems diagrams and describe the dynamic complexity of systems. To illustrate the rudiments of the language of systems, consider the example we mentioned earlier, filling a glass of water. You might think that's not a system, it's too simple. From the linear viewpoint, we say, I'm filling a glass of water. But in fact, as we fill the glass, we watch the water level rise. We monitor the gap between the level and our goal, which is the desired level. As the water approaches the desired level, we adjust the faucet position to slow the flow of water until it is turned off when the glass is full. In fact, when we fill a glass of water, we operate a water regulation system involving 5 variables. Our faucet, our desired water level, the glass's current water level, the gap between the two, the faucet position, and the water flow. These variables are organized in a circle or loop of cause and effect relationships, which is called the feedback process. The process operates continuously to bring the water level to its desired level. And Nick, would you show diagram? Go ahead and show diagram 1. And this is showing a real simple linear cause and effect thinking where A causes B, causes C, causes D. And then in systems thinking, you have those same elements, but you can see that each one of those impacts the other. And one of the axioms of system thinking is that every influence in the system is both cause and effect. So it influences, all the influences go both ways. Okay, would you go to number 2? Okay, great. So this is a diagram of the system of filling a glass of water, and you can see what starts it all off is our desire to have water filled at a certain level. And then you can see that it starts off with a perceived gap, which at the beginning is the entire glass because it's empty. And then you adjust the faucet level. Your behavior adjusts that faucet level to increase the water flow, to create a new current water level. So the perceived gap gets smaller and smaller, and that process goes on. Now, this seems like, and it is, it's a very simple example. And you might say, well, how's it relevant? What I'm trying to introduce is the fact that if you talk about the causality of systems, this can, in a very simple way, help understand causality and behaviors. Though simple in concept, identifying all the influences in a system can help us have a better sense of deeply ingrained ideas such as causality. In everyday language, when we say, I'm filling the glass of water, we imply, without thinking very much about it, a one-way causality. I'm causing the water level to rise. More precisely, my hand on the faucet is controlling the rate of flow in the glass. This statement describes only half of the process, from the faucet to the flow of water. Here. But it would be just as true to describe the other half of the process and say, the level of the water in the glass is controlling my hand. So it's my view of where the water level is that makes me act in a certain way. The distinction is important. I know it sounds kind of, well, you know, why worry about this? This sounds like a lecture. The distinction is important because seeing only the individual actions and missing the structure underlying the action lies at the root of many of our society's problems and our inability to successfully deal with complex situations. And that's one of the primary principles of systems thinking, which is structure causes behavior. I mean, let's think for a minute. What if instead of, this starts off with you introduce a desire. What if instead of filling a glass of water, you wanted to feed your family, or you wanted to figure out how much money you needed before you could retire? There are just, literally a limitless number of desires that you have or a group has. We could insert the desired membership of this church. What if we wanted to grow our membership to 150? We would look at the perceived gap and say we want 150 members of the church and we have 75, for instance. And then you look and try to identify the influences that you could, the tools that you have and the influences that you could bring to bear to address this desire that you have. So understanding this simple system has just literally thousands of applications. At the congregational meeting in May, we voted to approve a new set of bylaws for the church. One of the changes involved instituting a new structure on the board of directors called the Nerve Center structure, where each of the officers and 3 at-large board members would each be assigned areas of focus. Because of our decreasing membership and fewer people available to serve in middle management positions as committee chairs, this change was suggested to ensure comprehensive oversight, proactive intervention, and a balanced and responsible operation, even with fewer members available. This is an example of proactive systems thinking where the dwindling resources of our church are structured in a way that promotes our ability to handle the dynamic complexity of our organization and achieve our desired outcomes. And congratulations to all you who had a part in that. I think it's wonderful. When someone is viewed entering the country illegally, can we mete out justice based on seeing only individual actions, or do we have a responsibility to try to understand the structure underlying the actions? What were the influences? Have we as a country contributed to those actions? Global warming, U.S. companies selling weapons to drug cartels, natural phenomena such as droughts have all been identified as influences in people's decisions to vacate their home and immigrate to the United States. During his presidency between 1977 and 81, Jimmy Carter was trying to deal with a flood of illegal immigrants from Mexico. He suggested that nothing could be done about that immigration issue as long as there was a great gap in opportunity and living standards between the United States and Mexico. Rather than spending money on border guards and barriers, he said we should spend money helping to build the Mexican economy, and we should continue to do so until the immigration is stopped. He was never able to get support for that approach, but it shows great insight into understanding systems and trying to address root causes. I read in the Collard Times recently that the California agricultural industry may have problems harvesting up to 70% of its 2025 crops because of its reliance on immigrant labor, while our current administration is carrying out an aggressive deportation policy. Now there's a debate in the administration about whether to offer exceptions to the deportation policy for farm workers. So you can see how this loop, this influence got introduced to this policy. The situation would be considered a balancing feedback loop to the system to slow down this massive deportation policy. And that policy illustrates how proceeding with drastic changes without an understanding of the system and the consequence of those changes due to interactions with other parts of the system will predictably create unintended consequences and dysfunction. The mass immigrant deportation program illustrates other principles of systems thinking, such as the easy way out usually leads back in. The cure can be worse than the disease. Faster is often slower. And unless you understand the system and the points of leverage, the harder you push, the harder the system can push back. Our U2C3 social program supports Tacos Not Bombs by providing lunches once a month to the homeless community in Corpus Christi. This effort addresses one of their needs. From a system perspective, it addresses what would be a symptom of homelessness. At a recent board meeting, it was proposed that we sponsor a homeless individual seeking to escape homelessness by understanding the causes of their homelessness and introducing positive influences in the form of financial and emotional support. It was suggested we might do that for 3 to 6 months, monitoring the process and try to help that address the root cause of that person's homelessness. So just as mopping the pool of oil on the floor was necessary to take care of a problem caused by a distant root cause, perhaps providing lunches is necessary to take care of a problem that is caused by another a distant root cause. And perhaps we can look at ways to get to the root of the problem by using systems thinking. If it is within the means of UU, perhaps it is a good application of the seventh UU principle. Now, here's a tough question, and I'm getting close to the end here. According to the UU principle, are we responsible for what's happening in our country right now? So we'll take another look at the seventh UU principle. Respect for the independent web of all existence, of which we are a part. Notice it says of which we are a part, not of which we are a victim or an observer, but a part, as in participant. I think the definition of the word part in the Webster Dictionary that applies here is, quote, an essential portion or integral element, end quote. So we cannot divest ourselves of the responsibility for what's happening because we are, quote, an essential portion and integral element of this system. And that brings us to another very important principle of systems thinking. There is no blame. Sometimes that makes me sad to think about that, but there is no blame. Part of mastering systems thinking is giving up the assumption that there's an individual or group of bad people responsible for undesirable outcomes. The feedback perspective suggests that everyone who is part of a system shares responsibility for problems generated by a system. And as the filling the glass diagram shows, I mean, there are just a variety of ways to influence what's going on. Now, that doesn't imply that everyone involved can exert equal leverage in changing the system, but it does imply that the search for scapegoats or blaming individuals is not a helpful activity. Having said that, I acknowledge that our current political situation may present special challenges, even for systems thinkers. Donella Meadows, who authored the book Thinking in Systems, wrote, and this book was written in 2008, so it was before our current situation. Changing the players in a system is a low-level intervention as long as the players fit into the same system. The exception to that rule is at the top, where a single player can have the power to change the system's goal. I have watched and wonder as only very occasionally a new leader in an organization from Dartmouth College to Nazi Germany comes in, enunciates a new goal, and swings hundreds or thousands or millions of perfectly intelligent, rational people off in a new direction. So that doesn't say, I'm not saying system thinking is going to solve things, but if that is happening, then I would suggest it's even more important for us to embrace the seventh UU principle. I suggest the seventh principle does many things. It helps us to be more effective, non-blaming problem solvers. It helps remind us that we are part of the system. It can help us look for fundamental solutions and key points of leverage to address problems. It can help us develop patience by understanding fundamental solutions take more time than symptomatic solutions. It can help us be less judgmental and understanding that behaviors may represent desperation caused by systemic influences, not ethical failures. In conclusion, I suggest that by looking closely at the seventh UU principle, which this was all about today, we find it contains a critical set of responsibilities for us as UUs. By respecting and understanding systems, we can better understand what is happening and why. We can more wisely introduce change, from altering the structure of our church governance to exploring ways to help the homeless to looking for ways the country's system structure is being subverted to an undesirable goal, and stay connected, informed, and use our insights and influence to strive for better